So welcome to Bunny's Designs. This is a live show with live people. It's recorded for Ustream.tv and also for YouTube for people to watch at their leisure. I'm working in the Magical Dawn by Hanna Karlzon, and this book I'm scratching colour in and then leaving them for a later date. So I did start some on our New Year's streamathon, but I'm playing about with grungy colours, and kind of grungy and neo bright colours don't make kind of the same sentence, but what I've managed to do out of my big set of neos, I've kind of cut them down to a bare minimum where you could still do the grungy effect. And the way I get the grunge is complementary colours. So on our colour wheel we have red at the top, and then we have yellow and blue. And then in between the yellow and blue we have green. In between the yellow and the red we have orange. And then in between the purple and red we have purple. And basically I've got 12 colours. I've got 2 colours of each primary and secondary colour. So a primary colour is a red. I've got a pink and a cold colour. I've got a light and a dark orange. I've got a light and a dark purple. I've got a light and a dark blue. So I've got a cold blue and a warm purpley blue. I've got a light and a dark green, and then I've got a warm yellow and a cold yellow. And basically all these colours are going to make every colour on the planet. Now you can make them with 6, which I'm going to do in another video, but just for this grungy effect we do need our purples because we've got our yellows. We do need our greens because we've got our reds, and we do need our oranges because we've got the blue. So these are primary colours, and these 3 are secondary colours. But when you look at them from opposite sections across the colour wheel, they are complementary. So we've got red and green, which are normally straight above. We've got purple and yellow, and we've got blue and orange. And we've got a light and a dark of each one. And that's going to give quite a nice grungy effect. I've just been using it on the butterfly. And I've been wanting to do this picture for a long time, this butterfly, and I hadn't got the guts to do it. So this is the grunginess. So we're scratching 2 complementary colours together and then doing a very gentle wash one over the other. So the purple will gently make a grungy yellow, and the yellow will make a grungy purple. And you have to practice this technique a little bit. It's not an instant easy thing to do, but with a little bit of practice it gives some really nice grungy colours, and also it makes just that little bit different. So we've got one same product, but we've got a different way of using it, and I always like that. Excuse me, a quick slurp. So what I've done here is I've got the dark green, which I am actually using Empire Green number 290, and I'm scratching just roughly because there aren't any gaps in the middle. I'm going to scratch this colour and manipulate it to the end. And the complementary colour I've used for this is the pinky red, and this particular one is number 80 Carmine. And so I'm just scratching a little tiny bit of colour at the end of every kind of petal. So I did the other ones because it was just a bit easier to do it, although it didn't take very long. And again, you can scratch this colour in and leave it. You don't have to do it straight away. And leave the neos at home and just take a water brush or a rigger, and you can do the colouring while you're away somewhere. So it's a good travel way this. So now we have the ultramarine number 149, and I just scratched a bit of colour in that one. Literally just a rough bit of colour. I'll zoom in a minute when I get to the colouring bit. This is number 50 and it's flame red, and I've used this as a dark orange. Remember, I had a light and a dark. The green colour was the pale green, which is number 720, bright green, and I've just scratched a bit of green over there. And I intended on using the red for that one, so that would be scarlet number 70. And it isn't the coolest red. Cadmium red would be the coolest, but it'll do. So I'm using this one instead of cadmium red. So I'm just going to scratch the tiniest bit of colour, and if you need a thin edge, use the flat edge of the crayon. If you don't kind of if you don't sharpen them, and I don't sharpen them because it's a waste. I hate to waste my things. So the next bit is a little bit of green that I've missed off this one, and again I need that edge. Sometimes you just got to concentrate to get that to there. The next one was the warm yellow, which was golden yellow number 20, and I just put a little tiny bit of a scratch in the middle of each tiny flower, and then I used the pale blue, which was number 161, light blue, and I just managed to just get a tiny dot just in between each one. I then used the scarlet number 70 for the toadstool, and I've used the dark green, which was number 290, emerald green, and that was for the edge. And again, I just need a sharp point for the stem. I've used the pale purple for this one. Did I use the pale purple one or the dark purple one? I think I used the pale purple one, which was number 1110, lilac. Just a little bit around the outside. And then I used the golden yellow for this one, which is number 20, golden yellow. Now I used number 30, orange, for this one. I used the orange colour for the blue, which was number 30. So I think we've coloured everything in, and I'll zoom in and you can see just how rough it is, because the neos just, whoops, sorry, wrong way, melt. And because they melt so well, I've just managed to scratch just a little bit of colour quite roughly in there. So I've got my number 1 Derwent water brush because it's the smallest one and it's easy to use, and I do have a baby wipe. I have used this most of the day, but it's still quite damp. I probably want a piece of paper because there seems to be some colour on there. So I'll start at the top. And what I'm going to do is start with the lightest colour. So this is the yellow. So I'm activating this yellow. And then I'm going to kind of draw over the yellow to the purple with the yellow. And that's dulled the purple, but it's also picked up purple. So now that's dulling the yellow. And I'm going to leave the middle plain, I think. So again, clean the brush. So we activate the yellow. Activate the yellow. And we've now got yellow on the brush, so we activate the purple, and the purple will instantly go a little bit of a dull colour. And then we just want to drag once over the top, which just dulls that yellow and left us quite a nice bright centre. So there is a difference, you can tell the difference between the grunged yellow and the bright yellow. So you've got to remember oh, thank you, Suzanne. Sorry, I can't see the end of the... You could, but the problem with a watercolour... James just said, can you get the same effect with watercolour paint? Well, the thing with that is you're mixing a wet with a wet. And so you probably get to the grey faster than you would the grunge, if that makes any sense. I've done it with Inktense pencils, but you need a dry medium. You really need it, so it would be more difficult to do with a wet medium. Now, I will be making some greys and grungy colours with these same colours, and you can see you can make them wet and work with them, but it wouldn't have this grunge effect because it goes against what it is. So this is wet and it's now activating the blue while depositing a tiny amount of yellow, and then one stroke over the top will grunge that. Now you could do it dry. You could colour everything the colours you wanted and then go over it, because this method is if you had a bright yellow daffodil and you wanted to, and you had a petal going underneath another petal and you had a shadow, you don't use grey, you would add a touch of its complementary colour and you will make it wet. So then you would mix the colour, you would do all the brights first, and then you would start adding a touch of its complementary colour to dull it. And what you're doing is making it grungy, you're dulling it, and that makes it a shadow. And that's why if you use a complementary colour to tone down and to grunge and to grey, to make your greys, your flower will look so much better because it's made with the same colour, you've just added the complementary colour. Whereas you add black to anything to make a shadow, it's not very good. So when we were talking earlier about shadows and about complementary colours, you work wet, so you don't have two kind of dry things to make it grungy, but you do. If this was the centre of the petal in full sunshine and this was the underneath, then you've touched a little bit of purple in there. So you would use it for that. Always use that instead of using black or greys. Never add cold greys or any greys. You only add complementary colours to make a grey. But this particular technique in a colour book, you need dry medium to make it that much easier. So we've got the yellow, and then we're touching the blue, and then the blue is dulling. Does that make more sense? But yes, and this particular technique wouldn't work. But what we talked about with all the colour, the early videos with all the colour mixing, that's how you do your colour mixing with oils, acrylic, watercolour, gouache. Always use a touch of complementary colour to the colour you want to make a shadow, and then you've got your shadows. So what we have here is bright red, but this is grunging colours. This is slightly different. So the red goes over the green gets activated, and that's activated too much. So we've now got a grey. So that green and red have gone together and made a grey. So that didn't work particularly well. So we're activating the yellow. All the yellow is activated. Then we're activating the purple, and we have a touch of yellow in there, so we haven't got that bright purple anymore. Then we just touch down. So there's a difference between mixing colours and greys, which we're going to do in the next video. That's what we're going to do in the next video. But we're mixing colours, and then we're adding complementary colours to make greys. So that's what we did with this one. See, and I think there is a video on this, mixing greys. Oops. So this is mixing greys with complementary colours. So there's never a black or a white being used in any of those. It's just purely these 6 colours, greens and purples and reds, mixed together to make greys. Whether it's a warm grey, a cold grey, a purple grey, a green grey. So that we'll be doing that in a minute with the neos, but at the minute this is what we're after, grunge. Complementary colour, grunging up its counterpart. I hope that made sense. Did that make sense? And this is a little bit more difficult. So you look at your colour and you think, well, the red is going to be stronger than the green, so we're going to do the green first. So we're going to activate all that green. And you would do this if it was... Sorry, we're having a bit of a storm here. So you could do this with pastels, you could do it with watercolour pencils, any dry watercolour medium, and then we're going to activate the red, and we've got a little bit of that green on there. So what's happened is that red is dull. We've activated the red, and we've got a bit of red on there, and that's going to dull, but you've got to do it in one. You cannot stroke twice, because it will mix the two colours together and give you a grey. And we don't want grey, we want a grungy green. And then you have to clean your brush because you get rid of your grey. So again here we've got activate the green. Push it around where you want it. Activate the green. Stay away from the red if you've happened to go over a bit. Then activate the red, and that bit of green on that red has grunged it up, and then you want to stroke once, and that red will grunge the green. If you want more red, grunge up. But if you carry on, you'll end up with brown, and you don't want to do that. Oh, that's good. That's good. So our next one is this one. So we do the yellow because it's the brightest colour. But don't be fooled about the yellow, because that yellow, once it touches that purple, has dulled it. So you can take the darkest purple you have and put a very light touch of yellow to it, and it will grunge it down. And you wouldn't think adding a touch of bright yellow to a dark purple would do that. Oh my goodness me, we're having a bit of a storm. So and then we activate that purple. That yellow is dulling down. We've picked up the purple and we stroke once. If we carried on, we'd end up with a beautiful grey, but we're not doing greys here, we're doing grungy bright colours. So again, we just take that red, activate that green, wipe once. Now, because it doesn't work as well, because they're both very strong colours, and you end up with a purple, but it doesn't matter, it's working okay. So again, we've got a bright red, do the green if you can just once. Right, so now we've got the bright orange, so we'll go around the bright orange, and it depends on the size of the space and the amount of colour. So we've activated the orange, we're going to take that blue and we're going to draw it over the orange just once. Activate the orange, draw it down, activate the blue, and then just draw it once over and it'll grunge it up. Now, the colour I've used here is a very pale orange. It's a yellow orange, and of course we all know that blue and yellow make green. So you're going to end up with a really nice dark grunge. If you carried on mixing, you would end up with a green, a very dark green, but you'd end up with a green. But you can get some really nice grungy colours from the bright neos. But everyone's different, because every petal is going to be different, because you've scratched a different amount of colour on, a slightly different amount of water. You need to just try and do it once, because you will end up with don't have so this is why you can get some nice greens by using colours that are next to the colours you're supposed to use. So you can do a lot of colouring with just 6 colours. Whereas if you just, somebody gave you a green in a box, you could just use that. So get the blue out and then just stroke just once. So you get rid of that really, really bright orange, grunge down the blue, and then stroke. If you carried on, you would end up with a brown, grey browns, lots of greys, as which we're going to do in the next. So we've got, and it is a pale orange. It's not a dark orange, this one. Oh, it's supposed to be a dark orange. And the nice thing is you can mix the blues and the oranges that you use to give slightly different variations. So again, we're doing the green first because it's a paler green. Get all that green done. So we've picked up the green is on the brush now. So it's grunged that bright red, and then we just sweep once. Any more and you end up with a brown, because the red and the green will make a brown. So it's fairly fast is this way to do it, but it works better on smaller spaces, I have to say. So we've got the green that's grunged the red up, and then the red will grunge the green up. But again, it's quite nice that you can do it slightly differently each time you work, so you end up with some brighter than others. So it's not boring, it's quite a nice way to work. So this time we're going to do the red. Now this is going to be a bit more difficult because I'm going to have to take the red in, dull down the green, and then stroke once. Because if I go back again, because it's got quite a lot of blue in it, that green is going to make a purple, and I don't want a purple. So we've got that pinky red, we've got that green, and we stroke it once, and it's just dulled that red. So you end up with some quite muted purpley green colours. But they're not mixed, they're loose and they're different. So we have a bright pink, but we just activate that grey. Sorry, that green. No, I've not done it with flowers before, so it's a bit of a new thing for me. You have to clean your brush every time because you do not want any of that green back on your red until you're ready for it. So you get some really nice effects. Activate a bit of that green and just stroke once to dull that down. Yep, we're brewing up another storm out there today. Then we can take that green and I think we could have a different red in the middle. So activate that green and activate that red. Oopsie. It's quite grungy. Oh, hi May, welcome to Benny's Designs. Anybody else popping in? I'm just going some grungy colours. So that's what we've got from just scratching some colours in. Again, and you can't mess about because you've got to get that red mixed over that green while it's wet, so you've got to kind of really go in there and then stroke over one and the other. If it gets dried, you've got to kind of do it again, because you are mixing on the, you are technically putting a layer of a grungy colour, a complementary colour over the top, and then that green is going to grunge that red up, and then one sweep. If you have to do two, you end up with a brown. Now actually I don't mind it on this, it's a bit organic, I don't mind it too much. So I just thought we'd experiment with this. So there's green on here now, activate that red which has dulled it, and then we kind of just, there's a bit too much green on there, so what we are doing is making a brown on the brush, and the brown is going on the red. So but it's quite a fun way to work, and it's again a bit different. We don't have the neos, just using them in a slightly different way, because we all know how bright and wonderful they are, and we can get watercolour effects, and now we can get nice grungy effects. But one thing we do really want to do is to mix the colours, not on this particular way of working. We don't really want to mix the colours. We're not making greys, we're making grungy brights. So that red has dulled that green. It's still green, it's not brown. So I've picked up the green, I've made that bright red, grungy, and then the green is still green, but it's a dark green. But if you do carry on mixing, you end up with brown rather than a grungy kind of colour. But I actually like the colours, I really like those colours, they're quite nice. Now, if you get a paler colour, you probably will end up with a green, because as we know, a light orange is near yellow, and yellow and blue make green. But you get grungy greens. You do get grungy greens. So we've got almost a brown there, which is browning up this a bit too much, because the orange is just as strong as that blue. But there's some gorgeous colours in here. So again, you could scratch all this colour in and leave it for a later date. And the other thing you would need is a baby wipe. So sometimes it's just quite nice to play about and then just gently grunge up. Oh, thank you, Judy, thank you. So have you got any questions? To put this in the middle, so again you've got the bright yellow, activate the purple, the purple's dull, and then it dulls down the yellow. And it only works, well, it doesn't only work with complementary colours, but it works best with colours that are completely opposite the colour wheel. And I didn't do that one right, but it still worked out okay. So bring that pink down, pinky red. Sorry guys, I'm not sure what's going to happen with this nasty weather. And again, just one stroke. Now because I've already done that, it's turning into a purple because it's mixing together. But you're getting some really nice colours, and not every petal is the same. So you've got some pink going on. Touch the green and then just stroke up. And clean the brush. And then we want a little bit of green coming up. So that's the green. So we need a bit of pink. To dull that down, and then take that to dull it back. If you mix it too much, you'll end up with a purple. So that was just a very quick way. I'm not going to finish it, but I'll show you it at a later date. And then we get that red dulled, and then just stroke once. You can only stroke once, but I'll pan out, you can see what it looks like. So you've got some quite unusual colours that you wouldn't normally get from your neos. And so even though I've only got 2 reds and 2 greens, I can use both reds with either green. So that's given me 8 colours, not just, you know, we've got 2 complementary colours, so we've got 4. Oops, sorry, 4. So you can mix and match, and this red and green is going to be different to this red and green, but then I can use this red with another green further round, so it completely changes. If you do mix both colours together, you'll get a grey, and that's what the next video is about. But this is just doing a grungy way of turning these very bright colours into a grunge. They're still fairly bright, but they're just toned down just that little bit. So thank you for watching.